Hello, and today we're going to look at the nested circle infographic. I've got my page set up in front of me already. I'm using a page of 1700 by 1300 width and height respectively, and I've got my colors that I'm going to use for this infographic on my right hand side. The first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to head over to the toolbox or tools control panel or tools panel, and I'm going to select my ellipse tool, holding down shift and control and the left mouse button. I'm going to click on my canvas and then scale up by pulling the mouse back. That's going to create a circle of equal proportions. I'm going to scale this down a bit more. Next, I'm going to duplicate this circle twice. 1, 2, moving the circles a little bit to the side each time so that I can select them easier. I'm going to select the first circle, and then I'm going to go to my color picker, and you can go here to get your color picker. You can press D, and I'm pressing D, and I'm going to select this first light beige, and then I'm going to go and press D again for the second circle, select the blue, lighter blue, and then press D again for the third circle and select the orange. So we're seeing the three of them separately now. Next, I'm going to create a new circle, and I'm going to hold down Control and Shift and scale this circle down. I want this circle to have a bold color, so I'm going to pick up purple because we're going to need to see this circle. Scroll up a little bit, and I may scroll these up a little bit afterwards, but first let's move on. The next thing we need to do is that we're going to need the Align Toolbox or control box, and to access that you can go to your object, go to Align and Distribute, or you can hit Control Shift and A. So with the Control Shift and A now, we're going to go and make sure that last is selective relative to, and basically what this is saying is that the last object that we select in our order of selection will be the object that does not move. So basically the second object that you select is the object that stays. The other object will move relative to that object. So we're going to make sure that the last selected one is the purple, and we're going to want to align the right edges of this. So we're going to look for the right edge one, align right sides, and the purple's moving. Looks like I selected that one last accidentally. Let's go again, right edges, there you go. And then we're going to select the purple and the blue. I want the purple and the blue circles to be aligned on the left edges. Not selecting my things right, am I? The left edges, good. And for the last one, we actually want the top edges aligned. So first we have to select them, align them to center, and then go to the top edges. So we have our basic shape right here. I think I may just increase the size of all of them just a little bit, center it just a little bit more, and then we can get moving. So the first thing I'm going to do after this now is that we need to take out this circle out of every one of these circles. So the first thing I'm going to do is to multiply this twice. 1, 2, good. And then I'm going to select this circle and select the first circle that we can see, which is the orange circle, and I'm going to go to path difference. This is also control minus sign, and I'm going to be using control minus sign for the rest of them. Now you notice we don't see a change, and that's because we have two other circles on top of the difference. But if we pull it out, you notice that this circle's been cut out. We're going to do the same for the blue, and then lastly we're going to do the same for the beach sand beige. Okay, I duplicate it one more time because we're still gonna need this, but I'm going to move this. No, I'm not gonna move this actually. I'm gonna keep this here. The next thing we're going to do is that we need to, let's take a look at what it looks like first, and we can see that all of them are separated. Good. The next thing we need to do is that, as we see in the original image, we need to make them overlap, and I want this thing to overlap starting with the blue. So I'm going to duplicate this blue and duplicate this purple, and I'm going to select the two of them, and then we want to cut this circle relatively in half. So I'm going to get the path and scroll over and cut this circle in half. Good. Now when we cut it in half, we notice that there we get our first sign of the overlap. It's looking nice. Good. And we can also see that it's right here. If we just change the different color, we see it right here. Good. Now instead of overlapping for each one of them, we're going to snap the rotation of one into the middle of this circle so that it comes round evenly for each one of the three circles, and we're going to snap it to the middle. And in order to snap it to the middle of this circle, we need to go to our snap box on our right hand side and select snap an item's rotation center. Once this is selected, then as we move this cross, which is the rotation of the original object, to the center, there'll be a snap for the center of rotation. So now all we have to do is duplicate it and rotate it to this side, duplicate and rotate to this side as well. And we're just going to color them. I'm going to use D for my color picker and D again for my color picker and D again for my color picker. Alright, excellent. I see a little piece of blue here. I'm going to have to move that a bit, but that's okay. And we see that we have our rotation. It's looking really good. Alright, I'm gonna quickly just create a small box. I'm gonna take off the center of rotation and I'm going to color it this color, remove the stroke and put it underneath just for now. Good, so we have our inset circle. I'm gonna just move this out of the way. Got one there, delete that. Move this next one out of the way, and we can see it's starting to really take shape. Looking really good. Now we also want to create a beautiful drop shadow for all of these ones now. Now because these things are on top, if we use the regular drop shadow, we may run into a problem because the order will cut these in half and we won't see the full blur. So what we're going to need to do is that to select the original objects right here that we had created, just put them in white for you so you can see them, and we're going to rotate them slightly. So first we have to duplicate it, put it in a darker color so we can see, and then rotate it just gently. Rotate it anti-clockwise. Good. And then we're going to put them underneath, respectively. 1, 2, and 3. And then we can see that if we change the opacity of these, just to give you a preview how it's going to look. So press Ctrl Shift and F to go into the fill and show dialog box. You can see we've got a very nice drop shadow going on here, working very nice, looking very, very cool. So we have our drop shadow. We need to add some nice gradients to this thing, make it pop a little bit. So I'm gonna keep you out here, let's keep you up here, and I'm going to select the 2. Now you have to keep in mind that there are 2 here. If we only use a gradient for one of them, let me just join these together, and I'm going to make it beige. If you only use a gradient for one of these, then you'll notice that you're not going to get the nice effect that you're looking for, where the both of them are shaded. It's going to look, one's going to be in gradient, the other one's not going to be. So in order to fix that problem, you need to select both of them, and when you apply the gradient tool now, the both of them have a gradient, an equal gradient applied to them. We're seeing this? Good. Have an equal gradient applied to them. Good. We're going to do the same for these. I'm going to draw the darkness out and the light side in. And for this now, I'm going to draw the light side in and the light side out and the darkness in. And I'm going to use darker part here. Wonderful. Good. So now we're moving okay. It's really looking nice. It's popping out okay. Next, I want to cut off some of the drop shadow for this one particularly, and I'm going to do that by drawing a line, because I only want this section of the drop shadow to show. And I'm going to click this shadow, and you would go to object path, and go to difference, and this would leave the shadow left, but I'm going to keep these shadows intact. Alright, wonderful. So the next thing we need to do now is that I want this entire infographic to have a drop shadow. So I'm going to access, make sure that you have to access the entire circle. That's not the small one, but the one behind that one. Good. Easy to get lost, so you can just pull and press Ctrl Z, and that will help you to see. And we're going to duplicate all of these, and then we're going to add them together. And you can go to path, and we're going to use union. Combine will work too, but union in this case. And we get our 3 circles, union. And then we're going to we're going to press the down button just to move it down a little bit. I'm going to give it a color of black and send that to the bottom, with the lower section to the bottom in the options above the tool control box, above the toolbox. Good. Now because I already have a document here, you're not going to see it. It's going to go even behind this piece of paper right here. So I'm just going to press it once and it should come up. Good. So we see the black underneath. I'm going to give this a blur of 0.7. and then I'm going to reduce the opacity down. I think 13 is good. Reduce the opacity down to 13. Yeah, I think this is looking okay. We'll just carry it down just a tad bit more. Awesome. And now we have our drop shadow. The next thing I want to do is add some highlights to this entire thing. And the highlights are going to go on the edge. And for the highlights, I just need to add it to this section. This section right here that we created. And these highlights, we're going to use the stroke to create these highlights. In fact, we think we should add it to the outside circle instead. My apologies. Add it to the outside circle instead. I'm going to add a stroke. You can simply do this by holding shift and selecting the color in the color palette at the bottom. So I'm going to hold shift and white for these, and we're not seeing it as much, but what we're going to do to see it more, we're going to increase the stroke style for each one of them with all three of the circles selected. I'm going to increase the stroke style to 5. See, that looks okay. 5 is looking okay. Is it a bit much? No, I think that's, let's take it down a notch to 4. Okay, 4 looks good. Okay, and then we're just going to reduce the opacity of them, so we don't want them looking like outlines. Alright, for the shift, so use the opacity, or better yet, we're going to do, after we create the white, we're going to select the circle. Just going to use the color dropper and select, hold shift and select the beige, the lighter beige right here. Good. And then for the orange circle, go to the color dropper. I'm going to select the lighter beige once again, and we can make this beige slightly lighter in your hue and saturation so that it shows us a little bit more. Okay, and then for the blue, same thing. Go to your color dropper, hold shift, go to the lightest part or out here, select it. I'm going to make it slightly lighter, or slightly so lighter. Okay, and this is going to give us a nice highlight. I think we can stand to add a bit more to it, so I'm going to increase this to say a 7. I think that looks okay. No, just send it back to a 5. That's okay. So it has a highlight, wonderful. Has our gradient, it's looking really nice. I'm going to add a final shadow to it, and I'm going to just highlight everything here, duplicate this circle with the Control and D, and then I'm going to chop this circle in half. By doing that, I'm going to create a box around it and select differences. You can also use the circle control toolbox to create it. And in fact, I'm going to go to path, and I'm going to select intersection for this one. Good. And lift this up slightly. This is looking good. Then I'm going to put this in black and move this to the bottom and raise it up one more time. Then I'm going to use the gradient tool, left click, pull down from the black. If you don't pull it from the black, it's going to be a different color when you pull it. Good, so that is coming from the shadow source. Going to lift it up high. Good, and then just slightly reduce the opacity so the shadow is not seen as much. Excellent stuff, looking really nice. Good, you notice a piece here showing, but that's okay. We're going to use our remaining circle, bring him back into the middle and raise him to the top and cause him to be white. That way it blocks out the shadow and looks good for when we're ready to move. So I'm gonna add a slight blur to these, ever so slight, and perhaps a 0.3. Good, and we are good to go. Our circle infographic is looking really good. Let me draw these colors a little closer. Looking really good. So I just have to decrease the opacity of these things just a bit more. Yeah, this is all relative stuff. This is all things that you can do for yourself, just for the aesthetics of what you're doing. Okay, so we have ourselves our infographic style circle looking good. We need to add some icons now. So I've already prepared some icons. In the next tutorial, I'm going to look at how I created these icons. So I'm going to go to them, the icon display. Whoops, let me just open, see if I can find it in the videos, tutorials, graphic and icon display. Open. It is failing to load my icons. Alright, let me make a quick search into something else that might display it. Alright, file, open. See if you open these. You will open these. Okay, the icons here. Good, copy. Alright, so I'm going to paste them here. Good, and I've already written the information, so I'm going to copy them and paste it here. Good. So let's place these here. Let's overall finish this graphic. I'm going to reduce the size of them slightly. Put the open source sign on the blue, turquoise, the Ubuntu on the orange, and the Inkscape, characteristically the Inkscape on the beige. Put it up here slightly. Put you up here, and I can carry you down a bit. Alright, it's looking okay now. Alright, so I'm gonna give the Inkscape a brown because the beige is not gonna show the white so well. Whereas the other two I'm going to give a white. Good. Now the other two, let's move this around. We're going to add the title for the Inkscape. Right. Let's bring it down a little bit, and then I'm going to make this brown. Good. And then I'm going to have the title for open source. Right. I'm going to have to play about with the text a bit just to make sure it fits. And yeah. Alright, and then I'm going to scroll you down a bit too. Excellent stuff. Make you both white. Alright, it's just some edge work, you know, playing it by eye. Not always the best thing to do, but just for this case, we're gonna play it by eye. Send the Ubuntu down here. Select this in white, and then scroll it down. Scale it down also with the Control Shift. Use white, and we're just moving this ever so slightly, and we have our 4 pieces. Also, to create an inset for the Inkscape section, I'm just gonna press Ctrl and D, and I'm going to hold Alt, and Alt right here will reduce the movement of the move, and I'm going to use white, and this is going to create our inset effect. Move slightly to left and slightly down, and then I'm going to place it below the Inkscape logo. I think we can zoom in here. I'm going to use plus to zoom, or you can head to your control box and zoom. Good. And I'm just going to have it here, and this should create the inset. And then all I have to do now is reduce the opacity of this object ever so slightly, and it should create a nice inset, and it does. Good. Okay, so let's add the last bits of it. Put it to the side. And let's smooth this up slightly because a lot of empty space up here. Good. Oh yes, the numbers. Let me just add the numbers fast also. So I'm gonna add the infographic up here. Draw these over here. Lift them to the top. Number 01. By the way, I'm using the Arial font. It's a slab serif font. I'm going to make the first one the blue, and set this in white, and make the second one the Inkscape, and I'm going to use this, set it to 2. Let's make sure it's upright, and I'm going to use brown, and then I'm going to set the last one to be down here, and I want it to be white, and that is Ubuntu, and it will be okay. Then we're just going to add the finishing touches, and I'm going to scroll this down just a little bit. We're going to add some drop shadows, but the reflections to these icons. So I'm going to duplicate first the open source icon. I'm going to use the invert button, or the flip vertically button in the top, the tool control box section, and I'm going to place it down. I'm going to use the darker color of the blue also for the reflection color. I'm going to have to move the text a little bit. Down. It's okay if it overlaps the text a bit, it won't be showing. Good. Press down with the gradient and pull down, lift up slightly. And these are subtle differences, but it's these subtle differences that, well, make the difference, and they help the graphic to just pop that little bit more. For the Ubuntu, I'm going to lift it up higher. Let's lift it up a slightly bit higher. I'm going to duplicate this and carry it down and invert it just the same. and flip vertically. Oh, doesn't seem to be changing much. I don't think it would anyway. Okay, next thing, after we invert it, we're going to use the dropper tool, color picker, and we're going to select the darker orange, click the darker orange, and then pull the gradient downwards. Hold Control to put it down in a linear motion. I'm gonna lift it up slightly and then place it behind the actual logo, and can pull this up slightly and just pull it up a bit more. There you go. And then last but not least, we're going to do it for the Inkscape. I don't have to change the color of this. The brown is already dark enough. I can already move it to the side a bit if I wish, and I'm going to pull it down, put this up slightly, make sure it joins, and yeah, I think that's kind of, put up this a little bit more. Alright, and that's it. We have our drop shadows applied. Okay, next thing is that it's going to add an inner shadow inside here. I'm going to duplicate it once, turn it black, duplicate it twice, and I'm going to hold Control and Shift and scale this circle down, give it a different color so that we can see what we're getting. Good. Select the two of them by holding Shift, and then we're going to select difference, and if you remember, you can go to Object, Path, select difference here, or you can use the Control Shift minus sign on your keyboard. Good. With that, now you have a circle, and we're going to blur out this circle, just a little bit. Good. And drop the opacity down enough. You can give a slightly heavier blur. Drop the opacity down enough, and that's good. I think that's good now. Now we could clip this shadow so that it doesn't go past the borders, but then that's a different tutorial, and also it's not doing that much damage to the circle, so I think it can stay just as it is. Can high and bring it out a bit. Good. Subtle but effective. Alright, so we have the drop shadows, and we have the shadow inside the circle too. I'm just gonna finish it by typing typographic template so that it matches the first one. Good, and we are finished. Just add the icing to the cake now. I think I can just add my logo to it. I can find my logo. Display. Nope, that's not going to open. File, open recent, icon, circle graphic, display tutorial, circle graphic. Going to select you. That's my logo. Come here and paste it. Scroll it down, and we are finished. Okay, thank you for watching. This is my longest tutorial yet, and my first infographic tutorial. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you learned something. If you liked the video, then you can subscribe, click like, leave a comment if there's some things you don't understand. Also, the font that I use again is Aleo. That's Aleo. I'm going to leave a link to the font in the description.